Echo froze the moment they stepped into the barn. The dog never froze. His nose pressed hard against one square of the floor, cleaner than everything else in the room. Caleb tapped it with his boot. A hollow thump answered back. "That's not normal," he whispered. Echo dug fast, scattering hay until a metal ring appeared, old, heavy, and marked with 3 tiny scratches. Caleb had seen the same scratches in his father's notebook the night before. His breath caught. His dad didn't leave him this barn by accident, and whatever was under that ring, someone tried very hard to hide it. Caleb knelt, brushing the dust off the ring with the back of his hand. Echo stayed glued to his side, tail-stiff eyes locked on the floor as if he already knew what was coming. Caleb pulled gently. The ring didn't move. He tried again, harder this time. Nothing, just a low creak from deep beneath the boards. "This thing's been shut for years," he murmured. Echo let out a short, urgent bark. Not fear insistence. Caleb wiped more hay away and spotted something he'd missed. A thin line outlining a perfect square around the ring. A trapdoor. Carefully built, precisely hidden, and definitely not something a simple farmer would carve for storage. His father had avoided this barn for a decade, locked it, warned him off it, treated it like a place that held more weight than wood and dust. Caleb tightened his grip on the ring again, bracing his feet. This time it shifted just a fraction, but enough to send a cold rush of air up through the floorboards. Echo backed up, ears pinned. Caleb stared at the dark line widening beneath them. "That," he whispered, "is not supposed to be there." The morning sun sat low over the ridge as Caleb walked the path from the barn to the farmhouse, Echo trotting at his heel. The night hadn't been restful. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw that thin black line in the floor widening, felt the cold breath rising through it. But now, in the clear light of day, the farm felt almost ordinary again, quiet, open, a little too big for one man and one dog. Caleb paused at the edge of the field. The land stretched wide, rolling grass, a few stubborn oak trees, the old fence sagging in places. It was beautiful, in the way forgotten places often were. But it also carried the weight of people who once lived, worked, and argued here. His father most of all. "You'd hate that I'm even thinking about opening that thing," Caleb muttered. Echo gave a soft grunt, as if disagreeing. Inside the farmhouse, dust coated everything. A coffee mug still sat by the back window from who knows how many years ago. Caleb set his pack down and rubbed the back of his neck. His father hadn't been a collector, but he hadn't been careless either. Everything on these shelves had a purpose, even if that purpose had died with him. Caleb pulled open a drawer by the old desk. Papers, receipts, 2 pocket knives, and a folded county map. He unfolded it on the table. Creases had hardened over time, creating deep valleys along the paper. Echo leaned in, nose twitching. "You smell something?" Caleb asked. The dog didn't answer, just stared at a set of numbers penciled in the margin. Coordinates not perfectly written, but deliberate. Someone had circled an area near the western fence. Caleb frowned. He never talked about that part of the land. He could still hear his father's voice gravelly, even on good days. "Some acres don't need your feet on them. Leave them be." Caleb had never questioned it. Now it sounded more like a clue. He let out a slow exhale and set the map aside. The whole house was like that, small puzzles tucked inside bigger ones. Drawers left slightly open, a ledger with missing pages. Boxes stacked by the back door that his father never explained. The man had lived here, but he hadn't shared here. Not after Caleb left for active duty. And definitely not in the last few years when illness crept in and took more of him than time ever could. Caleb walked to the sink and ran the water for a moment until the pipes groaned back to life. "You think he wanted me to finish something?" he asked quietly. Echo sat beside him and nudged his arm with his nose. It wasn't much of an answer, but it was enough to steady him. He stepped onto the porch. The sun had risen fully now, warming the dry boards beneath his boots. From here, he could see the entire property, the fading red of the barn, the long dirt lane leading toward town, the overgrown path near the fence line. It struck him how small his father's world had been, and yet how heavy the man's silence felt now that he was gone. "All right," Caleb said, patting Echo's side. "We check the west fence. If it's nothing, we let it go. If it's something—" He didn't finish the sentence. Echo didn't need him to. Together they headed down the worn trail, the barn shrinking behind them while the unanswered questions grew with every step. And somewhere between the oaks and the old fence line, Echo suddenly stopped again, nose up, listening. Caleb felt the hairs rise on his arms. Whatever his father left behind, it wasn't just under the barn. Echo stood still, nose lifted toward the breeze, pushing in from the far fence. Caleb slowed beside him, scanning the empty stretch of land. Nothing but grass and old posts leaning like tired soldiers. Yet the dog's tense posture meant something was off, subtle but real. "All right," Caleb whispered, adjusting the strap of his pack. "Show me." Echo trotted ahead, stopping every few feet to sniff the ground. Caleb followed the dog through waist-high grass until the path narrowed into a thin strip of earth that ended at the west fence. Up close, the fence looked worse, several posts missing entirely, wires sagging as if no one had touched this section for years. Caleb crouched, brushing his hand over the worn wood. "Dad used to fix every fence within a day," he murmured. "Didn't matter if it was storm season or not." Echo's ears twitched. Caleb noticed something, then an old wooden stake half buried in dirt, marked with faded red paint. A survey marker, not county issue. Hand-painted. He wiped more dirt away. A rough X had been carved deep into the top. "Why mark this?" he muttered. Echo moved past him, circling a patch of ground on the other side. Caleb climbed through the broken section of fence boots, crunching on dry leaves. Echo's nose was locked on a spot where the soil dipped slightly. Caleb pressed his heel down. Hollow no, soft but not natural, as if someone had once dug here, then filled it back in. His mind flickered through memories, the nights his father wouldn't come in for dinner, the times he disappeared behind the barn with a lantern, the way his shoulders tightened when Caleb asked about the west field. He'd always assumed it was grief, or habit, or stubbornness, but now he wasn't sure. Echo lowered his head, sniffing deeper, tail stiff. Caleb knelt, pushing some soil aside with his fingers. Only a few inches down, something scraped his nail. He brushed harder until a strip of canvas surfaced, old, brittle, frayed. A buried tarp. Caleb froze. "What were you doing out here, Dad?" He dug gently enough to expose a corner of the material. Underneath, the soil was darker, packed tighter, like it had been disturbed long after the surrounding earth settled. Echo whimpered low, soft, uneasy. "Not now," Caleb whispered. "Not yet. We're not ready to dig up a whole field." Truth was, he wasn't ready to dig any of it up. Not the tarp, not the barn, not the questions rattling around in his chest. He stood and dusted off his hands. "We'll come back, with tools and a plan." Echo didn't move until Caleb gently nudged him toward the fence line. On the walk back, the dog stayed close, closer than normal, as if anchoring Caleb's thoughts, whenever they drifted too far into places he wasn't ready to visit. Inside the farmhouse, Caleb grabbed a notebook from a drawer. It wasn't his father's, it was blank, the kind Caleb used during deployments. He opened it to the first page and wrote, "Day 1, the barn, the ring, the marks, the field." Then he paused, tapping his pen against the paper. He didn't know what he was documenting yet, but the act of writing felt like steadying a shaking hand. Echo curled at his feet. Caleb glanced at the wall clock. Only noon, the whole day ahead of him. He sighed, rubbing his eyes. "Let's check the house again." Dad hid things everywhere. The old farmhouse felt different now, less like an empty shell and more like a place holding its breath. Caleb moved room to room, the faded living room, the small kitchen, the hallway lined with old family photos. He paused at one picture, his father in his 30s, standing with two other men near the barn. He'd seen the photo before, but something new stood out, the same 3 notches carved into the tractor behind them. The symbol again. "Why would you mark things?" Caleb whispered. He lifted the frame. Behind it, the wall had a faint outline of a square, an access panel once removed and reattached. He pried it open. Inside, he found an envelope thick with papers and a rusted key with a broken loop. A key without a lock. Caleb opened the envelope, pulling out several folded county records, plots, signatures, transfer dates, names he didn't recognize. Some parcels crossed out, others circled, some connected by thin pencil lines. Echo lifted his head, ears perked. "You see it too, don't you?" Caleb breathed. Something wasn't right. He spread the papers across the table. His father's handwriting filled the margins, short notes, numbers, initials, a few underlined words. Disputed, unfair, not abandoned, hold until safe. Caleb felt the room shift around him. His father hadn't been working the fields those nights. He'd been piecing together something else entirely. A knock startled him. Just a loose shutter tapping against the frame. Still, it pushed him back into the present. He folded the papers and slipped them into his notebook. Echo nudged his elbow. "Yeah," Caleb murmured, "I know. The barn." He didn't want to go back there yet, but ignoring it would only make the questions bigger, and he was already drowning in enough of those. On the walk back to the barn, Echo stayed ahead, glancing over his shoulder to ensure Caleb was following. Inside morning, light spilled through broken slats, painting uneven stripes across the floor. Caleb approached the corner where the metal ring lay half exposed. In daylight, the markings around it looked clearer, 3 notches forming a subtle triangle. He knelt and traced them with a fingertip. Same marks as the tractor, same as the field stake. That can't be coincidence. He pulled out his notebook and sketched the symbol. Echo sat beside him, steady as stone. Caleb closed the notebook with a sigh. I need to open it, don't I? Echo didn't move. Caleb wrapped both hands around the ring. The metal felt colder now, colder than it should under sunlight. He pulled slowly, testing the weight. The wood beneath groaned a stiff, stubborn sound, but didn't lift. He planted his feet and pulled harder. The board shifted a fraction, the same fraction as last night, enough for cold air to seep up from the gap. Caleb let go, breathing hard. Not fear, something else, something heavier. He stood brushing dust from his hands. Not yet, he whispered. We do this smart. Not alone. But Echo's eyes stayed locked on the ring. Caleb followed the dog's gaze and felt a prickle run through his chest. Whatever his father hid under that trapdoor, it wasn't meant to disappear. And it definitely wasn't meant to stay buried forever. By late afternoon, the wind had shifted, carrying the dry smell of cut grass and something faintly metallic, almost like old nails left in the Sunday. Caleb wouldn't have noticed it if Echo hadn't lifted his head, sharply ears stiff, and angled toward the barn. What now? Caleb murmured. Echo trotted ahead, not anxious but purposeful, the kind of movement he used when he knew something was wrong but didn't consider it a threat. Not yet. Inside the barn, shadows stretched longer than they should have, even with sunlight spilling through the slats. The trapdoor sat exactly where they'd left it, ring exposed, wood, dusty. Nothing had moved. Nothing should have moved. But Echo wasn't looking at the trapdoor this time. He was staring at the back wall. Caleb followed the dog's gaze and saw it a faint, fresh scuff on one of the lower boards. Not old wear. Not weather. Clean, sharp. As if a boot had scraped against it recently. Caleb knelt, brushing his thumb over the mark. A tiny fragment of dried mud flaked off. Someone was here, he whispered. The mud was damp, meaning whoever it was came after the morning dew, meaning today. Echo paced once, then stopped in front of the wall again, nose tracing the baseboard until he froze at a small knot in the wood. Caleb leaned closer. It wasn't a knot at all. It was a nail newer than the others, hammered in sideways, as if someone had quickly secured something behind the plank. Caleb's heartbeat tightened. That wasn't here before. He tried the board. It didn't budge, but there was a hollow sound behind it deeper than the barn wall, different from the usual echo of empty space. Echo pressed his paw against the board, then looked back at Caleb. Okay, Caleb breathed. All right, we're doing this. He grabbed a pry bar from the tool rack. His father had always kept one within reach. Maybe he'd known someone would eventually need it. The board gave after 3 hard pulls, snapping free with a brittle crack. Behind it was a wooden cavity only a few inches deep, lined with airtight plastic sheeting. Whoever built it wanted it protected. Inside sat a small metal tin. Old, dent in the corner, no rust. Caleb swallowed. Tools he expected. Spare nails. Maybe a leftover tobacco tin. Not this. He pulled it out carefully and sat with his back against a beam, Echo beside him. The lid was stiff-sealed by time and dust, but it opened after a twist. Inside was a folded sheet of paper and a single brass key, different from the one he'd found in the house. Thicker, heavier, industrial. Echo sniffed it once, then let out a low, curious rumble, not a warning, but recognition, as if he'd smelled the same metal from somewhere else today. Caleb unfolded the paper. Coordinates, dates, and one handwritten line in his father's slow, steady script. If you're reading this, someone else is too. Don't open the floor alone. Caleb felt the air leave his chest. Someone had been there. Someone still was. And his father hadn't just hidden something beneath the barn. He'd been hiding from someone who wanted it. Caleb stood closing his fist around the heavy brass key. Echo, he whispered. The dog's ears shot up alert. From outside the barn, gravel crunched. Someone was walking up the driveway. Caleb froze where he stood. The crunch of gravel outside grew clearer, slow, steady, deliberate. Not the uneven stride of a neighbor, not the careless drag of a delivery truck. This was someone who knew how to walk quietly and didn't care that he was being heard. Echo moved first. He stepped between Caleb and the open barn, door muscles, tight tail, stiff body, angled in a protective stance Caleb hadn't seen since deployment. It wasn't aggression, it was readiness. Easy, Caleb whispered, though his own pulse hammered in his ears. A shadow crossed the strip of sunlight spilling across the barn entrance. Caleb stepped sideways along the wall, keeping Echo within reach, slipping behind a support beam the way training had etched into muscle memory. His eyes remained fixed on the light. A figure appeared. not fully just enough of a silhouette to understand he was tall, broad-shouldered, and moving like someone comfortable on unfamiliar property. Caleb's voice came out steady. "Can I help you?" The footsteps stopped. For a moment only, the wind answered, brushing through the cracked slats of the barn. Then a man's voice, calm, almost friendly, carried inside. "Was looking for the previous owner," he said. Didn't know the place had changed hands. Caleb didn't step into view. It did. So the man took 2 slow steps closer. "Shame. I was hoping to pick up something he owed me." Echo's throat vibrated with a warning rumble. Caleb's grip tightened on the metal tin still in his hand. He slipped the brass key into his pocket. "I didn't catch your name," Caleb said. "You didn't. Not a threat. Not an answer either." Caleb leaned just enough to see the outline more clearly. Work boots. Clean jeans. Jacket too heavy for the weather, odd. Most locals didn't dress like that in early fall. "Whatever business you had with my father," Caleb replied, "you can take it up with me." A short, humorless laugh. "I doubt that." The man shifted as if to step inside. Echo lunged 1 step forward, teeth bared, not snapping, not attacking, just a sharp, precise message. "Not another inch." The man froze. "Well," he said slowly, "looks like your dog has opinions." "Strong ones," Caleb said. A long moment passed. Then the man exhaled through his nose as though recalculating something. "You find anything interesting in that barn?" he asked casually. Too casually. Caleb's stomach nodded. "You should go," he answered. The man didn't argue, didn't apologize. He simply stepped back into the sunlight. "Be careful in there," he called, voice drifting away. That old man kept things he shouldn't have. Caleb waited until the footsteps faded. Waited until the old truck engine sputtered to life and rolled down the road. Echo stayed rigid the entire time. When the last echo vanished, Caleb finally let out a shaky breath and crouched beside the dog. "Good boy," he murmured, running a hand along Echo's neck. "You felt him before he even spoke." Echo nudged Caleb's pocket, the one holding the brass key. "Yeah," Caleb whispered. "I know." He reached into his pocket and pulled the key out again, studying it in the dim barn light. Thick, cold, designed for something industrial, something not meant for a simple farm. His father's note repeated in his mind. "If you're reading this, someone else is too. Don't open the floor alone." Caleb looked across the barn at the trapdoor. The message hadn't been a warning about what Caleb might find. It was about who might come looking for it. He swallowed hard and stood. "We can't stay here." He moved quickly, grabbing his pack, slipping the tin inside and checking the latch on the trapdoor to ensure it still sat flush with the floor. When he walked outside, the late afternoon sun had softened into gold, but the warmth didn't reach him. He scanned the road. No sign of the truck, no fresh dust cloud, but he couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Echo stayed glued to his side, glancing toward the tree line every few steps. The coordinates, the date entries, the hidden tin. The stranger who came hours after Caleb found it, everything pointed to one truth. His father hadn't buried a treasure. He'd buried evidence. And now Caleb had inherited all of it, along with the trouble that came with it. He kneeling beside Echo and whispered, "We go to the coordinates at first light. But tonight, we don't sleep here." Echo didn't argue. He simply pressed his head against Caleb's shoulder for a moment. Then as they walked back toward the house to pack, Caleb caught a glint through the barn's cracked window, something reflecting the last rays of Sunday, a piece of metal, a small reflection, like the edge of binoculars. Watching, Caleb didn't sleep that night. He tried stretching out on the couch, with Echo curled beneath the window, but the house felt hollow, too full of memories, and not enough answers. Every creak in the woods startled him more than he liked to admit. But what bothered him most wasn't the stranger's words. It was how Echo kept pacing from door to door like he expected someone to knock or break in. Around 4 a.m., Caleb gave up trying to rest. He sat on the edge of the couch, rubbing his eyes, while Echo watched him intently, ears forward, head tilted. "You're thinking it too, huh?" Caleb whispered. Echo let out a soft, throaty grunt. "Yeah, we're leaving." By dawn, they were already on the trail pack, loaded the tin hidden deep inside the brass key, secured in Caleb's inner pocket. The sky still held the faint purple of early morning when they reached the western fence line. It was a place Caleb rarely visited as a kid. His father never forbade it. He simply avoided it. A whole stretch of land he never mowed, never repaired, never explained. Tall grass brushed against Caleb's jeans as he walked. Dew soaked through the fabric, chilling his legs. Echo moved like a shadow-silent alert, stopping every so often to sniff the air. The coordinates on the old map led to a cluster of low oaks near the corner of the boundary, a place where the fence sagged under its own age. Caleb checked the map again. "This is it." Echo sniffed the ground, pausing by a patch of flattened grass. A trail. Fresh. Someone else had been here recently. Caleb crouched fingers brushing the soil. Damp. Packed down. Boot prints. Size 11 or 12. Deep heel impression, someone heavy or carrying weight. The stranger, or someone connected to him. Caleb's voice came low. Why here, Dad? What were you hiding on this part of the land? Echo moved ahead, slipping between the oaks, until he reached a small mound of dirt, unnatural, shaped like someone had dug recently, and covered the hole in a hurry. Caleb knelt beside it. The soil was looser in the center, darker in color. He pushed his fingers inside and hit something solid. Metal. He brushed more dirt away, exposing a rusted hinge, a buried lid. He dug carefully with his hands until a rectangular metal box revealed itself, military-style, old but still intact. A supply case. Caleb's throat tightened. You've got to be kidding me. He lifted the box out and set it on the ground. The latch was stiff from age, but it opened after some force. Inside were papers wrapped in oilcloth to keep them dry and a single object wrapped in fabric. Caleb unwrapped it slowly. A compass. Old. Brass. But not just a compass. Its back was engraved with a symbol. The same symbol he'd seen faintly carved beneath the barn staircase. 2 intersecting circles. Echo leaned forward and sniffed the compass, then nudged it toward Caleb, as if encouraging him to look closer. Caleb opened the oilcloth next. Inside lay several folded documents. Old identification cards. Photographs of people he didn't recognize. Notes written in short, terse lines. The last page wasn't notes. It was a list. A list of names. Next to 3 of them, his father had written one chilling word, missing. Caleb sat back, air catching in his chest. Dad, what were you doing? He flipped through the pages again until one line stood out, written in bold pencil, darker than the rest. If the archive is compromised, move the evidence to the ridge entrance. Ridge entrance. Not underground. Not under the barn. Somewhere outside. Somewhere accessible. Somewhere dangerous enough that his father never took him near it. Echo suddenly stiffened, tail straight like a rod. A soft snap echoed through the trees, a twig breaking. Caleb reacted instantly, slipping the papers back inside the metal case and dropping it behind the nearest oak. Echo moved in front of him, low to the ground, growl building. Someone was walking toward them. Caleb whispered, "Stay close." The footsteps grew louder, slow, measured, deliberate. A voice called out, familiar from the day before. "Thought I'd find you here," the stranger. Caleb stepped out from behind the tree enough to be seen, but stayed ready, muscles tense. "What do you want?" he demanded. The man emerged between the trees, hands in his jacket pockets. His expression wasn't threatening, it was certain, like he already knew what Caleb had found. "Your father and I had unfinished business," the man said. "Funny," Caleb answered, "he never mentioned you." "Oh, he mentioned me plenty," the man replied, "just never by name." Echo moved beside Caleb, steady as stone. Caleb kept his voice even. "If you think I'm handing anything over, I don't want your things." The man tilted his head slightly. "I want what your father protected." Caleb's pulse quickened. Protected from who? The man's lips curved, not quite a smile. "From men who don't take no for an answer." "Meaning you." "No," the stranger replied softly. "Meaning the men I'm trying to stop." Caleb blinked. That was not the answer he expected. The man took one step forward. Echo tensed, ready. The man didn't flinch. "If you found the case, then they're already coming. And trust me, you don't want to be here when they arrive." Caleb didn't move. "Why should I believe you?" "Because the man said," slipping something from his pocket and tossing it gently toward Caleb, "Your father trusted me once." Caleb caught it. A folded photo. His father, younger, standing beside the same man now staring at him. Caleb's heartbeat stumbled. Echo pressed against his leg, sensing the shift. The stranger said quietly, "You want the truth. Meet me at the ridge entrance before nightfall. Bring the compass." And then before Caleb could speak, the man backed into the trees and disappeared without another sound. Caleb stood still, staring at the photo in his hand. His father, the stranger, the compass, the list of missing people, the ridge entrance. Everything was colliding at once. Echo bumped his knee gently. Caleb whispered, "Yeah, we're going." But as he reached for the metal case behind the oak, he froze. It was gone. Taken. The metal case hadn't rolled away. It hadn't slid downhill. It had been lifted. Cleanly. Deliberately. Caleb's fingers tightened around empty air as Echo sniffed the ground where the case had been. The dog's ears pricked straight up, sharp, focused, alert, in a way that made Caleb's pulse jump. "Easy boy," Caleb murmured. Echo ignored him, nose tracing a tight arc in the grass until he stopped at the base of an oak. His body angled toward the tree line, Someone had passed through here. Recently. Caleb stood slowly, the photo of his father and the stranger still clutched in his fist. The two men in the picture looked younger, certain, almost defiant. Seeing them together made the air shift, made the stranger's warning feel less like a threat and more like a promise. Echo huffed, once impatient. "I know," Caleb whispered. "We're going." He pocketed the photo, checked the brass compass key again, and headed toward the ridge. The trail narrowed as they climbed. Dry leaves crackled beneath their boots. The morning light filtered through branches in thin, golden ribbons that made every shadow look deeper. Caleb had walked this ridge dozens of times as a kid, hiking, hunting, exploring, yet he had never noticed an entrance not to anything meaningful. His father had always kept him on the eastern side, away from the outcroppings. Echo led, now stopping every so often to scan the wind. He wasn't nervous. He was calculating, as if assembling scents and sounds into a direction only he could understand. "What do you smell?" Caleb asked softly. Echo's ears flicked. He didn't answer, he simply walked faster. They reached the first stone shelf, a flat, cracked slab jutting out over the valley. Caleb remembered climbing it for fun, trying to feel taller than he was. Today it looked different, too clean in some patches, too disturbed in others. Echo sniffed the stone edge and froze. Caleb knelt beside him. His fingers brushed a faint impression in the dirt, boot print, same size as the stranger. He was here, Caleb said. He stood scanning the ridge. Trees shifted softly with the wind. Nothing else moved. Then, a glimmer. Half hidden behind a cluster of boulders on the right, something metallic reflected the Sunday. Echo saw it too. His head tilted slightly, as if trying to confirm what he sensed. They walked closer. It wasn't a weapon, or a trap. It was a latch, bolted into the rock itself. What Caleb brushed away, the leaves piled around it. A rectangular metal plate emerged, flush with the ground. Heavy, old, built into the ridge decades ago. Echo nudged its edge, then stepped back, tail stiff. "You've seen this before, haven't you?" Caleb whispered. He didn't mean Echo. He meant his father. Carefully, Caleb slid his fingers under the cold metal handle and pulled. The hatch groaned, protesting years of rust and neglect, then lifted just enough to reveal a dark void beneath. A smell rose from below, earthy, stale, like an unventilated crawl space. Caleb swallowed. "Dad, what did you build out here?" Echo leaned forward, looking straight down into the black. Then his body stiffened, ears, snapping back, shoulders low. Not fear, recognition. Something familiar was down there. Caleb lowered the hatch again for now. He wasn't ready to enter, not without understanding what he'd face. "We meet the stranger first," Caleb whispered. "Then we come back." He took one final look at the hatch, committing every scratch, every bolt to memory. Then they kept moving along the ridge. They found him 20 minutes later. The stranger stood alone on an overlook, hands in his pockets, watching the valley below, as if he owned the view. He didn't turn around when Caleb approached, but Echo's warning growl made him lift his chin. "You came," the man said. "Not because I trust you," Caleb replied. "You shouldn't." "Not yet." "Then why am I here?" The man finally turned to face him. His eyes were tired, calculating, but not unkind. "Because your father didn't just gather documents," he said. "He protected people. And he wasn't alone." Caleb's breath hitched. "You worked with him for a long time." "What were you doing?" "Making sure the right families kept the right land." The man paused, "And keeping the wrong men from taking it." Caleb's jaw tightened. "The case you stole, it belonged to him." "No," the man corrected quietly. "It belonged to a family who never got to claim it." Caleb's hands balled into fists. "I could have helped them too." The stranger stepped closer. "Not if you died trying." Echo growled, moving protectively between them. The stranger raised his hands. "Easy, I'm on your side." Caleb didn't lower his guard. "Then explain," he said. The man exhaled slowly. "There's a group, old, organized, wealthy. They take land. They erase records. They bury people's pasts until no one can fight back." He pointed toward the valley. "Your father fought them, quietly. He saved evidence, hid families, him and men like me." Caleb felt the weight of the compass in his pocket, and the symbol, the circles, a mark for safe passage, the man said. Used by those who moved information and people through rural areas without being detected. Caleb swallowed hard. "Why me?" "Because your father trusted only 2 people enough to pass the archive to himself, and you." The stranger looked directly at him. "And now they know he's gone." Caleb's skin prickled. "Who's they?" Before the man could answer, Echo snapped his head sharply toward the trees. A twig cracked, then another, then a gunshot tore through the air. Caleb dropped behind a boulder as Echo lunged to cover him. The stranger ducked, pressing against the ground. "Move," he hissed. More shots followed, controlled, disciplined, too close for warning shots. Caleb's heart thundered. "They found us," he shouted. The stranger nodded, jaw clenched. "And they won't stop." Echo barked sharply, one deep, commanding sound that echoed through the ridge. Caleb looked at him. "Yeah, buddy, we're leaving," the stranger shouted. "You know that hatch you found?" Caleb froze. "How did you— Your father showed it to me once." He pointed down the trail. "Get to it. Now." Caleb grabbed Echo's collar. "Let's go!" They sprinted through the trees as bullets snapped branches around them. Caleb stumbled once, caught his balance, then pushed harder. He reached the hidden hatch, yanked it open, and felt the cold air rush out. Down the stranger yelled behind him. Caleb didn't think he dove into the darkness, Echo leaping after him. Above, footsteps thundered toward the ridge. And as the stranger jumped in last, slamming the hatch shut over their heads, someone grabbed the lid from outside and pulled back. The metal hatch clanged violently above them as someone yanked it back, trying to force it open. Echo barked one sharp, explosive sound before Caleb and the stranger both grabbed the interior latch and pulled down with everything they had. The hatch jerked once, twice, then the force outside stopped. Footsteps shuffled above, muffled voices, a harsh command Caleb couldn't make out. The stranger hissed, "They're checking if we're armed. We have seconds." Caleb leaned close. "What's down here, a passage?" the man whispered. "An old one. How old? Older than your father?" Echo whined softly, a warning, not fear. Caleb swept his flashlight across the space. They stood in a narrow stone corridor, reinforced with timber beams. Dust drifted in lazy trails from the impact of the hatch above. The air was stale, cold, holding the faint smell of old tools, old sweat, and something metallic. "Move," the stranger urged. "They won't stay up top for long." They hurried deeper. Echo stayed inches ahead, his body low but calm, like he recognized the tunnel's purpose. The corridor opened into a small chamber where the ceiling arched just enough for Caleb to stand fully. Rusted lantern hooks lined the walls. Old crates sat in stacks, some cracked open, some intact. Caleb's instinct pulled him toward them. "What is this storage shelter?" neither the stranger said. It was one of the old transfer points. "For what? Evidence? Documents? People?" He looked at Caleb. "Your father didn't build this. He inherited it. Same way you're inheriting all of it now." Before Caleb could respond, Echo stiffened again, ears snapping toward the tunnel entrance. A thud echoed from above. Then metal scraped against metal. "They found the hinge," the stranger whispered. Another thud. Harder. "They're forcing it." Caleb turned to the crates. "Any exit other than the hatch?" "One," the stranger replied. "But it's a climb." "A climb. Vertical shaft. 30 feet. Narrow." Caleb exhaled sharply. "Great." Echo nudged Caleb's knee, as if urging him to look toward the far wall. Caleb swept the flashlight there and froze. A ladder, old but intact, bolted into a vertical cut in the stone leading upward into another dark shaft. The stranger nodded. "He sees it faster than we do." Echo wagged his tail, once proud. Another thud above. This time the hatch bent inward, slightly dust raining down like powder. "No more time," the man said. "Give me the compass." Caleb instinctively gripped his pocket. "Why?" "Because the compass unlocks the next door. That's why your father left it." Caleb hesitated. Echo looked between them, then pressed his head firmly against Caleb's thigh, his silent "trust this." Caleb placed the compass in the stranger's hand. The man ran toward the ladder, motioning. "Up. They'll drop explosives next if they can't lift the hatch." Caleb didn't question it. He grabbed the ladder and climbed, muscles burning from the sudden rush of adrenaline. Echo waited only a heartbeat before Caleb called down. "Come now." Echo jumped high claws, catching the ladder rungs. Caleb angled his shoulder to help, guiding the dog upward with practiced movement they'd learned through years of mountain rescues during his service. The stranger climbed last, faster than expected. Halfway up, the hatch above blew open with a scream of metal. Voices echoed down the shaft. Move, flashlight beams stabbed the darkness below. Caleb climbed harder. Echo scrambled ahead, body pressed tight to the ladder paws, gripping like hands. "Almost there," Caleb shouted. The stranger looked up, then wedged the compass into a round slot carved into the upper wall, so perfectly shaped for it that it clicked into place. The stone shifted. A soft grinding sound echoed through the shaft as a horizontal seam widened, forming a narrow doorway. Inside, the stranger ordered. Echo leaped first. Caleb followed, shoulders scraping the rock. The stranger slid through last and twisted the compass. The stone door sealed shut with a deep, echoing thud. Darkness swallowed them, but then a soft amber glow lit the narrow tunnel ahead. Not electric, not fire. Phosphorescent paint. guiding lines on the wall, old but still glowing faintly. Caleb whispered, "Dad, what were you part of?" The stranger answered quietly, "Something built on trust and fear." They walked slow and careful. The tunnel angled downward in a long, gentle slope. Echo walked confidently now, tail relaxed, sniffing the air as if confirming they were finally heading in the right direction. "What's the plan?" Caleb asked. "Get to the end of the line," the stranger said. "And after that, hope you're ready to see the rest of your father's work." Caleb swallowed. He didn't tell me any of this. He couldn't. The less you knew, the safer you were. Until he died. The stranger didn't respond. Echo stopped again, ears perked toward a faint sound in the distance. A low hum. Mechanical. Steady. Caleb whispered. "You hear that?" The stranger's expression sharpened. "Yes. That's the generator." Then the room should be a dim yellow light flooded the tunnel. Then the space opened. Caleb stepped into a chamber twice the size of the barn's hidden basement. Shelves lined the curved walls, rows of carefully stored documents, maps, photographs, metal cabinets, wooden files, weatherproof boxes, a full underground archive. Echo sat at the entrance watching Caleb, carefully waiting for his reaction. The stranger's voice softened. "Your father didn't save pieces of history. He saved an entire network's worth of evidence." Caleb walked deeper inside fingertips, brushing over boxes labeled with towns, counties, dates, not random but organized. "This is everything," he whispered. "Everything they tried to erase," the stranger confirmed. Caleb turned. "If this is the archive, why hide more out on the ridge?" "Because the archive was compromised," once the stranger said darkly. "We don't know who leaked its location, but your father moved a piece of it before anyone could reach the heart of it." Caleb's breath tightened. He knew someone was coming for him. He knew they'd come for whoever inherited the land. And the archive, Echo growled, not toward the stranger, toward the shadows behind a row of cabinets. Caleb's flashlight snapped in that direction. At first nothing. Then a shape stepped forward. A man, dust-covered boots, jacket torn at one sleeve, breathing hard, one of the men who attacked them above. He smiled slowly. "Took us a while," he said, "but we found the entrance." Caleb reached instinctively for Echo. The stranger stepped beside him. Echo lowered into a ready stance. The intruder raised a device in his hand, a small black cylinder with a blinking red light. "Your father hid something important," he said, "and we need it back." Caleb whispered, "Echo, stay close." The man clicked the device. And the tunnel behind them rumbled, stones shifting. He had just sealed their only exit. The stone crash echoed through the chamber like thunder trapped underground. Dust showered from the ceiling as rocks locked into place, sealing the tunnel behind them. Caleb's heart leapt into his throat. Echo pressed against his leg, steady but tense. The intruder twirled the black cylinder between his fingers. "No more running," the man said. "Not for you. Not for the mutt. Not for whoever this is." He flicked his chin toward the stranger. The stranger didn't flinch. "You don't understand what you're doing." "Oh, I understand perfectly," the man replied. "Your little group kept records that should have stayed buried. Now I'm here to clean them up." He gestured with the device. "Hand over the compass." Caleb stepped forward. "Why? What does it unlock?" The man smirked. "You think your father told you everything. He didn't trust you nearly as much as you think." The words hit harder than they should have. Caleb kept his voice steady. "If you want something, tell me what it is." "What I want," the intruder said, "is the ledger." The stranger stiffened. Caleb looked at him quickly. "What ledger?" The intruder took a slow step closer, boots crunching on the dusty floor. "The one that tracks every stolen property transfer, every bribe, every forced eviction, every family your father tried to help. The same ledger Samuel Freeman died protecting." Caleb blinked. "Samuel who?" The stranger shut his eyes. "Freeman, my partner, the man in every document your father kept." He swallowed. "And the man who was murdered for it." The intruder raised the device again. "Last chance. Compass. Now." Echo's growl built into a low thunder. Caleb touched the dog's collar, steadying him. "You're not getting anything," Caleb said. The intruder's finger tightened on the cylinder. "Then you die underground." And he pressed the button. Nothing happened. A tiny hollow click echoed through the chamber. The man frowned, pressed it again. Click, click. The stranger let out a breathy laugh. "Idiot. That's a jamming beacon. It only blocks, signals it doesn't explode." The intruder's face flushed with rage. "Fine. I don't need explosives." He reached into his jacket. Caleb reacted before thought. "Move." He shoved Echo aside and ducked behind a filing cabinet as the intruder pulled out a pistol. The stranger dove for cover too, flipping a heavy metal cart to use as a shield. Gunfire cracked through the archive, loud metallic deafening in the enclosed space. Papers fluttered like startled birds. Dust rained from the beams overhead. Echo sprinted low, weaving between shelves. Not fleeing positioning. Caleb gritted his teeth. "Good boy. Stay hidden." The intruder advanced. "You can't hide in here forever," the stranger shouted. "Caleb, the left aisle. There's a second passage." Caleb glanced around, disoriented. "I don't see anything." Behind the crate with the yellow stripe, gunfire answered before Caleb could move. The intruder fired again, muzzle flash lighting the dark. Echo barked sharply, one single sound that broke through Caleb's panic. Caleb followed the sound, instinctively sprinting left. He slid behind a stack of crates marked with faded paint. Papers scattered under his boots. There, a metal crate with a yellow stripe. Behind it, a narrow slit where two stone panels met. "I need the compass," the stranger shouted. Caleb reached into his pocket and froze. Empty. His stomach dropped. No, not now. He scanned the floor, scanning spilled papers, dust, footprints. Echo appeared from the shadows, something gripped carefully between his teeth. The compass. Caleb exhaled shakily. "You're a lifesaver." Gunfire blasted again, sparks flying off metal shelves. Caleb, the stranger, roared. "Pass it!" Caleb tossed the compass. The stranger caught it mid-dive, rolled, and slammed it into a circular indentation hidden low on the chamber wall. A deep mechanical rumble shook the floor. The intruder spun toward the sound. "No, don't you." The stone split. A hidden door opened in the wall behind the stranger. Wind rushed in, cool, fresh, coming from somewhere far deeper underground. The intruder lunged. The stranger stepped back and slammed the lever beside the stone seam. The door snapped shut, right on the intruder's arm. The man screamed in pain, gun clattering to the floor. Caleb kicked the weapon away, instinctively sending it sliding under a cabinet. The intruder pulled desperately, but the stone door held him in place. "You think this will stop me?" the man snarled. The stranger crouched beside him. "No, but it will slow you down." Echo growled, inches from the intruder's face, teeth bared, eyes burning. The man froze, breath hitching. For the first time, fear shone through his anger. Caleb grabbed the stranger's arm. "We need to go. Now." The stranger nodded. He lifted the lever again, just enough for the intruder's arm to yank free, then slammed the door closed, completely locking the man inside the archive chamber. Pain or not, the intruder lunged, but his injured arm gave out and he collapsed to one knee. "Run," the stranger shouted. Echo shot through the newly opened passage, first Caleb on his heels, the stranger right behind. They sprinted down a steep slope as the hidden door sealed behind them. Only then did the stranger slow, gasping for breath. He won't stay trapped for long. Caleb steadied himself against the wall. "Where does this lead?" "To the lower network," the stranger answered. "Old tunnels. Your father knew every inch of them." Echo trotted ahead, pause, look back, then trot ahead again, guiding them with uncanny certainty. Caleb finally realized. Echo wasn't guessing. He was following a scent. A familiar one. The stranger noticed, too. "He's tracking something." Caleb nodded. "My dad worked down here for years. His scent must be everywhere." "No," the stranger said quietly. "Not just his." Caleb turned. "What do you mean?" The stranger met Caleb's eyes, somber, reluctant. "Your father wasn't working alone," he said. "Not in the end." Caleb felt something deep in his chest twist. Who was he down here with?" The stranger hesitated, breath trembling, then finally spoke. "The third man in the network. Was someone you thought died years ago." Caleb frowned. Who? Echo stopped dead ahead of them, ears raised sharply. His entire body leaned forward, staring into the dark. A shape moved in the shadows, a tall figure, broad-shouldered, stepping slowly into the dim glow of the tunnel. Caleb's breath caught. He knew that silhouette. He whispered, voice barely a breath, "Dad." The stranger grabbed Caleb's arm, voice low and urgent. "No, Caleb, don't move. That's not your father." The figure stepped forward into the light, revealing a face Caleb had seen only in an old photograph. Samuel Freeman. Alive. Samuel Freeman stood perfectly still, hands lowered, shoulders relaxed, almost serene despite the dust swirling through the tunnel. His hair was streaked with gray, now face marked by years of hardship and yet unmistakable. The same man from the photographs. The same man the stranger swore was murdered. Caleb's heartbeat hammered in his ears. Echo braced at his side, muscles coiled, tail, stiff, not aggressive but uncertain. Samuel's eyes softened as he looked at Caleb. "You look like your father." Caleb swallowed hard. "You're supposed to be dead." Samuel offered a tired smile. "I was. On paper. The stranger stepped forward sharply. You vanished. You didn't just disappear, you let us think you'd been killed. I had no choice, Samuel replied, voice low. You know that. You could have warned us, the stranger snapped. You left your partner alone. Samuel's eyes flickered with pain. And if I hadn't, I would have led them straight to all of you. Caleb raised a hand, trying to steady his voice. What is going on? Both of you start talking. Samuel exhaled slowly. Your father didn't just protect land records. He protected people tied to those records. Witnesses, families stripped of their property, whistleblowers. I helped him move them through these tunnels, safely, quietly. And the compass, Caleb asked. Samuel nodded. Keys to safe houses, drop points, evidence caches. The stranger crossed his arms, jaw tight. You should have told us you survived. I couldn't, Samuel whispered. Not once they put a price on anyone who worked with me. Caleb's mind spun. You faked your death to protect them. And your father helped me disappear, Samuel said. We split the archive. He took half. I took half. Where's your half? Caleb demanded. Samuel's expression darkened. Stolen. Months ago. The stranger stiffened. By who Samuel's gaze shifted toward the tunnel behind them, the one sealing the intruder in the chamber above. By the same men coming after you now. Echo suddenly barked a short, urgent sound. Not toward Samuel, but toward the narrow tunnel branching off to the right. Footsteps. Multiple. Caleb's pulse surged. No, they're already in here, Samuel nodded grimly. They know these tunnels better than you think. How the stranger growled. Because Samuel said one of our own gave them a map. The stranger's jaw dropped. Someone in the network betrayed us. Samuel didn't answer. Echo growled again, intense, focused. Then he darted forward and sniffed the air near the side tunnel tail, low head tilted. Samuel stepped forward. He recognizes the scent. Caleb's breath caught. What scent? Your father's, Samuel answered. The world tilted for Caleb. My father was here recently. Samuel shook his head. Not recently. But long enough that Echo still remembers it. Caleb felt dizzy. So, he knew. He always knew someone was coming. He prepared this place to be a last line of defense, Samuel said. He knew you'd eventually come here. Caleb tightened his fists. Then tell me the answer I've needed since yesterday. Why did he hide all of this? Why me? Samuel's expression softened. Because you're the only person he trusted to finish what he couldn't. Footsteps grew louder, echoing through the tunnel, multiplied by stone. The stranger drew a deep breath. We need to move. Now. Samuel nodded. The final room is ahead. That's where the original ledger is kept. Echo barked sharply, pushing them deeper down the passage. They ran. The tunnel widened as they entered a sloped chamber with metal rails embedded in the ground, old mining tracks. A rusted handcart sat near the far wall. Samuel pointed. That leads straight to the core vault. Caleb stared. How far? Half a mile, Samuel said. Downhill. The stranger climbed into the cart. Get in, Samuel, and Caleb shoved the cart forward. It creaked, then began rolling faster. They both jumped inside, with Echo leaping in last claws, skidding across the metal floor. Behind them, shouts, boots pounding, lights flashing. The enemy team had arrived. Caleb gripped the edge of the cart. They're gaining. The stranger scanned the tunnel behind. We need speed. Samuel pulled a brake lever upward, the opposite of what Caleb expected. The wheels shrieked, then locked into a steeper gear. The cart surged forward. Echo lost balance for a moment. Caleb caught him, pulling the dog into his chest. You okay, buddy? Echo let out a single bark affirmative. The tunnel blurred around them. The tracks rattled violently beneath the cart, threatening to tip them with every turn. Samuel shouted, Hold on. Light flickered up ahead, warm, golden, unnatural for such a cold tunnel. Caleb narrowed his eyes. What is that? The vault entrance, Samuel yelled over the clatter. The place your father built to hide the ledger. Echo tensed suddenly, ears flat, body braced. Something was wrong. The stranger sensed it too. What's got into him? Samuel's expression fell. The brakes, he whispered. We're going too fast. Caleb's heart seized. Can we stop this thing? No, Samuel said. Not in time. The vault entrance rushed closer, stone archway narrowing rapidly. Echo barked wildly, pulling at Caleb's sleeve. Then Caleb realized the dog wasn't panicking. He was telling Caleb to move. Samuel screamed, Jump, jump, now. Caleb grabbed Echo, wrapped his arms around him, braced, and leapt from the cart. The stranger followed. Samuel did not. The cart smashed through the vault gate with a piercing crash, metal shrieking and sparks exploding in every direction. Caleb hit the ground hard, Echo tumbling in his arms. Pain shot through his shoulder. He looked up. Samuel Freeman was gone, carried straight through the doors by the runaway handcart. The stranger gasped. "We lost him. We lost one of the only people who knows the final location." Caleb staggered to his feet, breathing hard. "No," he said quietly. He wasn't looking at the shattered doors. He was looking at Echo, who stood rigid, nose pointed into the darkness, tracking something deeper inside the vault. Caleb whispered, "He's not following Samuel." Echo didn't blink. "He's following someone else." The stranger stared at the dog, who Caleb's throat tightened. "My father." Echo stood frozen at the threshold of the broken vault door, nose pointed into the black corridor beyond. Every muscle in his body leaned forward. His tail didn't wag, didn't tremble. It locked into a straight, unwavering line. A silent arrow. Caleb's breath caught. He knows this scent. He's sure. The stranger, dust-covered, limping, slightly tightened his jaw. "Your father didn't come down here. Not in years." Caleb shook his head. "His scent lingers on tools and tunnels, sure. But this," he pointed at Echo, "this is fresh." Echo reacts to recent scents, not old ghosts. The stranger hesitated. "Then who is he tracking?" Caleb swallowed. "Someone using my father's things. Clothes, tools, maybe even his work jacket." A colder thought followed. "Or someone who used to work beside him." Echo barked once, sharp, decisive, then darted into the darkness. "Echo, wait!" Caleb sprinted after him without thinking. The stranger muttered a curse and followed. The vault corridor was carved smoother than the tunnels above, reinforced with steel ribs and concrete patches. Water dripped steadily along the side wall, creating thin trails that glistened in the beam of Caleb's flashlight. Echo's paws tapped softly ahead, never slowing. The scent grew stronger. Caleb whispered, "You're on something, buddy. Keep going." The stranger panted behind him. "What if it's a trap?" Caleb didn't look back. It's all been a trap. They turned a corner, then another, until the tunnel widened into a circular chamber with a domed ceiling. Floodlights flickered weakly along the edges, powered by an old generator humming somewhere deep beneath the floor. At the center stood a workbench. On it, stacks of documents. A lantern. A half-filled coffee thermos. A worn flannel jacket draped over a chair. Caleb froze. His father's jacket. Echo walked straight to it, sniffed it once, then growled. Not at the jacket. At the darkness beyond the chamber, Caleb's voice cracked. "Dad wore that the last winter I saw him." The stranger frowned. "Someone wants you to think he's still alive." "Is he?" Caleb whispered. Echo growled again, louder. And then a figure stepped out from behind a pillar. Caleb's heart jolted. The man was older, face-lined beard, graying shoulders narrower than the man Caleb remembered. His left arm hung stiff at his side as if injured long ago. But his eyes, sharp, dark, familiar, locked onto Caleb's with painful clarity. Samuel's voice broke softly behind them. "No, that's impossible." Caleb didn't hear him. He heard only the trembling breath that escaped his own lips. "Dad." The man lifted a hand slowly, shakily. "Caleb." Echo's tension shattered. The dog bolted toward the figure, tail raised high, emitting a soft, trembling whine. The man knelt weak, but steady. "Hey there, boy. You remember me." His hand brushed Echo's fur with familiarity too natural to fake. Caleb stepped forward, feeling the ground tilt under him. "You're alive," his father smiled weakly. "Not the way I used to be. But I'm here." The stranger stared, stunned. "Benjamin, how we buried." Benjamin shook his head. "You buried what they wanted you to find." Caleb's knees nearly gave way. "Why didn't you come home?" "I couldn't." Benjamin's voice trembled. "They were watching the house. Watching you. Watching everyone connected to the network. So Samuel and I made a deal. He'd disappear above ground. I'd disappear below it." Samuel stepped forward, shaken. "You said you'd tell me when it was safe." Benjamin's eyes softened. "It was never safe." Caleb wiped a shaking hand over his face. "You let me think you were gone." "I know." Benjamin's voice cracked. "And it was the hardest thing I've ever done." Echo rubbed against Benjamin's leg, whining. The old man stroked the dog's head with familiarity only a true owner could manage. "I watched from the tunnels when I could," Benjamin said. "Kept working. Kept protecting the ledger." Caleb stepped closer. "Where is it?" Benjamin's eyes darkened. "Hidden. But not here. Someone's trying to steal it." The stranger narrowed his eyes. The intruder, Benjamin, shook his head. "No. Someone worse. Someone who already has half the archive, Samuel's half." Samuel stiffened, realization dawning like a slow blade. "You don't mean?" Benjamin nodded, jaw tight. "Yes. He betrayed us." Caleb gripped the edge of the table. Who, before Benjamin could answer, a distant explosion roared through the tunnels. Dust rained down. Lights flickered. Echo barked sharply, spinning toward the corridor. The stranger shouted, "They're breaching the upper network." A second blast followed closer, shaking the chamber. Benjamin grabbed Caleb's arm with surprising strength. "They want the ledger. They already know you're alive, and they know he's alive too." Caleb stared. "Dad, who are they?" Benjamin drew a trembling breath. "The ones who put a price on every name in that book. The ones Samuel feared. The ones who burned farms, took land, and erased families to build their empire." Caleb's pulse hammered. "Then tell me the name. Tell me who leads them." Benjamin looked at Samuel. Samuel looked away. Another explosion thundered much closer. Echo barked frantically toward the tunnel entrance. Benjamin finally whispered, "The man hunting us. The one who betrayed Samuel. The one who stole half the archive." He lifted his eyes to Caleb. "It's the stranger standing beside you." Caleb whipped around. The stranger was no longer surprised. He was holding a gun, pointed directly at Caleb's father. The valley was quiet again. Hours had passed since the final confrontation hours. Caleb could barely recall a blur of gunfire collapse, and the moment Echo leapt between him and danger with an instinct sharper than any command. The tunnel had gone still after the final echo faded, leaving only dust breath and the heavy silence of things finally ending. Now Caleb sat on the ridge overlooking his father's land. Echo pressed against his side. The sun was dropping behind the trees, casting long amber streaks across the worn fence line. The farmhouse looked small from here, fragile, weathered, but still standing, like the people who'd fought for it. Benjamin rested on a blanket nearby, propped against a boulder, weaker but alive. His breathing was slow but calm, every rise and fall, a reminder that Caleb hadn't lost him, not truly, not forever. Samuel had already been taken for medical care. His betrayal exposed his ties to the land thieves uncovered in the documents they'd recovered. The authorities would handle what came next. But justice, Caleb knew, was rarely neat. He looked at Echo. "You saved both of us." Echo nuzzled his hand, warm and steady. Caleb let out a long breath. "You know, for a long time I thought Dad kept his distance because he didn't trust me, because maybe I wasn't enough." Benjamin shifted slightly, opening his eyes. "No, son. I stayed away because I knew what would come if they found me. I thought distance would shield you." Caleb stared out at the land, golden now glowing, peaceful in a way it rarely had been in the last 48 hours. "I kept waiting for a sign from you," he said quietly. "Some message, some explanation." "You found it," Benjamin whispered. "You found all of it, and you understood what to do without me." Caleb felt something inside him finally loosen. The years of confusion, the ache of losing a father who was gone but not dead, the weight of a truth carried alone. Echo settled his head on Caleb's knee, grounding him. The wind picked up, brushing through the oaks like an old friend returning home. Caleb looked at the farmhouse again. "What do we do now?" Benjamin smiled faintly. "You already know." Caleb did. He stood slowly, brushing dirt from his hands. "This land, it was never just ours. It was everyone Dad helped. Everyone who lost something because someone powerful wanted it." He looked down at Echo. "We finish what he started." Echo barked once, soft but certain. Benjamin nodded, eyes warm with pride. "And you won't do it alone." Caleb helped his father to his feet. Together they walked back toward the farm, the long shadow of the ridge stretching behind them like a worn page turning. The orchard swayed gently under the fading light branches whispering in the breeze. Tomorrow, there would be calls to make, records to turn over, land titles to restore, families to contact. The ledger, every page of it, would finally be used the way his father intended. But tonight it was enough to walk together. As they neared the farmhouse, Caleb paused at the porch steps. The boards creaked the same way they had when he was a child. Echo circled once, then lay down at Caleb's feet, keeping watch over the quiet land. Benjamin sat beside him. "You know," he murmured, "I worried every day that I'd never see you again, that you'd never know the truth." Caleb rested a hand on his father's shoulder. "I know it now, and I'm not going anywhere." They watched the last light slip behind the ridge. The danger was gone. The lies were over. But the work, his father's work, was just beginning again. And as Echo lifted his head to the wind ears perked toward the open fields, Caleb felt for the first time in years not fear, but purpose, a calm, steady promise. Whatever waited tomorrow, he and Echo would face it together.